I gave my dad my kidney. Days later, he posted, "Real family members wouldn't hesitate. He owes me nothing." I agreed. Quietly removed him from my health insurance and cancelled his mortgage payments. By morning, 38 voicemails and an urgent knock. The shock on his face when I said, part when I decided to give my dad a kidney because it felt like the right thing to do. Our relationship had never been particularly warm or affectionate, but family had always been a cornerstone value for us. When the doctors confirmed that I was a perfect match, the decision seemed obvious. My dad had been struggling with kidney failure for nearly 2 years, undergoing dialysis treatments that had gradually worn him down. Despite our distant relationship, I knew I couldn't live comfortably knowing I could help him, but chose not to. Quietly, without any dramatic fanfare or public announcements, I agreed to the procedure. On a cool Tuesday morning in early November, I checked into the hospital, and within hours, my healthy kidney had been successfully transplanted into my father. The surgery went smoothly, and initially, everything seemed hopeful. A few days after the surgery, while I was still recovering at home, I received a call from my younger cousin, who casually mentioned something she'd seen online. Curious but unconcerned, I opened my phone and logged into my dad's Facebook account to check his latest updates. There, to my mild surprise, was a lengthy public post where he described the surgery and recovery process in detail. At first glance, the post appeared grateful, highlighting family bonds and generosity. But as I continued reading, I noticed a subtle yet clear undercurrent. My dad wrote that a real family member would never hesitate to donate an organ, and that real son understands family comes first. He concluded his message with a firm, direct statement that he owed me nothing special for something any real son would do without question. The words were carefully chosen, publicly implying my actions were nothing extraordinary but merely expected obligations. The post had already attracted dozens of supportive comments from relatives who agreed enthusiastically, praising his sentiments about family duty. Initially, I felt slightly unsettled, but chose not to respond immediately. As days passed, however, the implication behind my dad's words slowly took root in my thoughts. I'd always quietly supported him, financially, covering significant expenses like his monthly mortgage payments, and including him on my health insurance plan. For years, I had silently accepted the financial burden because, again, family was family. Yet, my dad's online message made me reconsider my role. If donating a kidney was simply expected, no different from basic family obligations, then perhaps my financial support was equally unnecessary or unworthy of acknowledgement. Reflecting calmly on this new perspective, I began thinking differently about the arrangement we had maintained for so long. I decided, without anger or bitterness, that perhaps it was time to quietly adjust our financial relationship, matching the new understanding my dad had publicly set. About a week after his Facebook post, I calmly made 2 phone calls. One to my insurance provider, and another to my bank. I informed the insurance representative that I needed to remove my father from my health plan, due to changed circumstances. The process was straightforward, and within a few minutes, my father was quietly dropped from my coverage. Next, I contacted my bank, and requested they cancel the automatic mortgage payments I'd been making on my dad's behalf. I explained clearly and calmly that these payments were no longer my responsibility. The bank complied professionally, and soon, all financial ties were neatly severed. Throughout this entire process, I felt neither satisfaction nor regret. Simply a calm sense of closure, aligning my actions clearly with my dad's expressed sentiments. The morning after making those changes, I woke to an unusually high number of missed calls on my phone. 38 voicemails to be exact. Nearly all of them were from my dad, each message growing progressively urgent. Before I could even finish listening to them, there was a firm knock at my apartment door. Without surprise or alarm, I opened it calmly, finding my dad standing there looking noticeably shaken. His eyes were wide, confused and slightly panicked, clearly struggling to understand why his comfortable financial support had abruptly disappeared. In that quiet, early morning confrontation, he demanded an explanation. Standing there calmly, face to face, I simply and clearly repeated back to him the exact sentiment he had publicly shared. "You're right. I owe you nothing." Part 2. My dad stood quietly in the doorway for several seconds, processing my words. It was clear he had not expected his own philosophy to return so swiftly and literally to him. After the initial shock faded from his face, he asked if we could discuss this inside. Without hesitation, I agreed, stepping aside calmly to let him in. We sat down at my small kitchen table, the atmosphere tense but quiet. He carefully began explaining his Facebook post, claiming I misunderstood its meaning. He said he hadn't intended to diminish what I'd done for him, only to reinforce his belief in family obligations. I listened patiently, allowing him to finish his explanation fully before responding. When he was done, I calmly reminded him that his words clearly stated he owed me nothing special, and that it was simply my duty as a son to give what I had freely given. Therefore, I concluded, my ongoing financial contributions were also no longer necessary. He sat back slowly, visibly uncomfortable but still calm. He then gently attempted to persuade me to reconsider my decision about the insurance and mortgage payments. He outlined his financial pressures in detail, quietly explaining the burden that medical expenses and housing costs would impose on him without my support. While he spoke, I felt an unexpected clarity and calmness in realizing how dependent he'd become on the very help he'd previously dismissed as ordinary and obligatory. I remained respectful as he finished speaking, taking care not to interrupt or argue. When he finished, I explained simply and firmly that I fully understood his concerns, but believed it was important to follow the standard he'd set. If giving a kidney was a basic family duty requiring no gratitude or recognition, surely financial support beyond that was equally unnecessary. I stated gently but clearly that if he genuinely believed my contributions weren't special, then he must also accept their removal without complaint. The conversation continued in quiet circles, my dad repeatedly returning to the topic of family obligation. He cited examples from his past, pointing out sacrifices he'd made when raising me, describing meals he'd skipped, or expenses he'd forgone. I listened respectfully, understanding the truths within his memories, acknowledging the reality of his sacrifices. Yet, I remained calmly firm. Each time he circled back, I repeated the simple logic he'd established publicly, that my actions were merely expected familial responsibilities. I reminded him that if what I'd done was ordinary and required no special appreciation, it made little sense for me to continue providing extraordinary financial help. Gradually, the quiet reality of our new arrangement settled over him. He seemed deeply uncomfortable, almost stunned by the logic, yet he couldn't find an adequate argument against it. Finally, after nearly an hour, my dad stood quietly and accepted my decision. He left without anger or dramatic protest, just quiet resignation and uncertainty. Over the following days, other family members began reaching out, calling or messaging me privately, expressing confusion or mild disappointment. Most asked why I'd abruptly changed a long-standing arrangement. Each time, I calmly recounted the details of my father's public post, emphasizing his belief that nothing I'd done was special or deserving of ongoing recognition. Some relatives remained puzzled, but many seemed to quietly understand, or at least accept the logic behind my actions. Over time, the initial wave of questioning gradually subsided, leaving a quiet yet noticeable shift in how my extended family viewed both me and my father. Within weeks, I learned through family conversations that my dad had quietly begun restructuring his finances, downsizing expenses, and arranging his own insurance. I felt no bitterness or satisfaction hearing this. Only a quiet sense of completion, acknowledging that he'd taken responsibility after relying on me for so long. Occasionally, relatives would mention seeing my dad at family events, describing him as more reserved and thoughtful, perhaps reflecting more deeply on the nature of family relationships. Meanwhile, our own interactions became polite but infrequent, quietly respectful, but noticeably distant, neither strained nor overly friendly. Slowly, the new normal took root, clearly establishing boundaries that felt healthier and more balanced. I had no regrets about my decision. Instead, I quietly accepted this as a meaningful lesson about family and personal boundaries. Part 3. Several months passed quietly after adjusting my financial support, and life settled into a comfortable routine. My health recovered fully, and I resumed working steadily, rebuilding my savings gradually and carefully. The emotional distance between my dad and me continued quietly, neither worsening nor improving significantly, but maintaining a calm, respectful distance. Occasionally, I heard through other family members that he was doing reasonably well, adapting quietly to his new financial independence, even though it clearly wasn't easy for him. While our relationship had certainly changed, it seemed to stabilize into something sustainable, defined clearly by boundaries that neither of us openly challenged or complained about. Then, one day, quite unexpectedly, my phone rang, and I saw it was my father calling. The timing surprised me since we hadn't spoken directly for several weeks, our conversations usually mediated briefly by other relatives. When I answered calmly, expecting perhaps a straightforward update about family matters, I was surprised to hear genuine uncertainty and hesitation in his voice. Quietly, he asked if we could meet in person, stating clearly that he had something important he wanted to discuss face to face. Intrigued but careful not to show surprise or curiosity, I agreed to meet him at his house later that afternoon. After hanging up, I found myself quietly wondering what could have prompted this unexpected request, though I avoided speculating too deeply, or becoming emotionally invested before understanding clearly what he intended. When I arrived at my dad's house, he greeted me politely, calmly inviting me inside. We sat in his familiar living room, the atmosphere quiet, but somewhat formal, clearly different from our past casual interactions. After a brief pause, he began speaking slowly and thoughtfully, clearly having rehearsed or carefully considered his words beforehand. He calmly explained that the past several months had taught him important lessons about gratitude, obligation, and family responsibility. He admitted honestly that his original Facebook post had been insensitive, not fully acknowledging the depth and significance of what I'd given him. As he spoke, He carefully avoided dramatic apologies or emotional declarations, instead focusing calmly and rationally on recognizing the genuine effort and sacrifice I'd made. His words were straightforward and sincere, clearly expressing regret without unnecessary sentimentality. After hearing him out fully, I quietly acknowledged and appreciated the sincerity behind his words, recognizing that this kind of conversation wasn't easy for him. I responded by calmly explaining my perspective once more, emphasizing that my decision hadn't been motivated by anger or revenge, but simply the desire to establish clearer boundaries based on mutual respect. I explained clearly that I believed our relationship would benefit from understanding each other's contributions more openly and realistically. He nodded in agreement, clearly understanding my point, appearing relieved that I wasn't holding on to anger or resentment. From there, our conversation naturally moved toward reconciliation and understanding, slowly rebuilding a mutual trust through calm and careful dialogue. Before I left, my dad carefully raised the topic of possibly restoring some aspects of our previous financial arrangement, though he did so quietly and respectfully, acknowledging my right to refuse. He explained clearly that he now fully understood and appreciated the value of what I had provided, and that any future support would be seen not as a duty, but as genuine generosity. I listened calmly, recognizing the sincerity behind his request, but gently declined to immediately resume financial support. Instead, I suggested we revisit the topic after some time had passed, allowing our rebuilt trust to solidify further. He accepted my response graciously, clearly understanding the logic behind waiting. In the weeks following that conversation, our relationship quietly began to mend, slowly moving toward a healthier balance, built upon clear boundaries and genuine mutual appreciation. Relatives noticed the subtle improvement, quietly commenting during family gatherings about the improved ease between us. I felt content knowing our relationship had transformed positively, grounded firmly in honesty and clarity. While we never returned fully to the financial dynamic we'd once had, our bond slowly grew stronger in a quieter, more mature way, defined now by respect and genuine appreciation, rather than obligation or duty alone. Part 4. Over the next year, my relationship with my dad evolved quietly and naturally into something genuinely healthier. We began spending more time together, sharing simple, comfortable activities like weekend dinners, or watching sports without pressure or tension. Financial topics rarely came up anymore, and when they did, they were approached respectfully, with clear boundaries and no lingering bitterness. This new normal felt good to both of us, bringing a sense of calm and genuine appreciation into our interactions. Gradually, relatives who had initially been puzzled by our changed relationship began openly acknowledging how positive these adjustments seemed. There was a quiet but clear recognition within the family that boundaries, once considered uncomfortable, could indeed create healthier and more respectful relationships. Eventually, my father experienced another unexpected health setback. A minor one compared to his previous kidney issues, but enough to cause concern. This time, rather than assuming my automatic support, he reached out calmly, respectfully asking if I'd be willing to help him navigate his medical situation. I responded positively, clearly appreciating the respectful way he approached me. Together, we calmly worked through his insurance options, reviewed medical advice, and carefully considered treatment decisions. It was a significant moment for both of us, demonstrating clearly how our relationship had grown, now defined by mutual respect and thoughtful communication rather than assumptions or obligations. During this period, I decided, independently and quietly, to resume covering some aspects of his medical expenses. Not from obligation, but as a genuine expression of support and care. I explained to him clearly that my decision was voluntary, something I wanted to do out of genuine appreciation for the growth he'd shown and the respect he'd continuously demonstrated over recent months. He responded with sincere gratitude, quietly recognizing the significance of this renewed support, without ever assuming it as a right or entitlement. This decision deepened the trust and understanding we'd carefully rebuilt, bringing quiet satisfaction to both of us. The rest of our family noticed these positive developments clearly, and relatives began openly expressing appreciation for the improved ease and clarity in our relationship. Family gatherings felt warmer and more relaxed, marked by quiet respect rather than tension or misunderstanding. Even extended family members who had initially been skeptical of my earlier decisions, now acknowledged clearly the benefits of open communication and mutual respect within family dynamics. Mive in particular, appeared quietly content, having fully adapted to a more independent, respectful approach to our relationship, one based firmly on mutual appreciation, rather than unspoken expectation. Reflecting on this entire experience, I recognized clearly how much we'd both grown. Initially, our relationship had been strained by unspoken obligations and resentment, but through clear communication and respectful boundaries, we had found a healthier, more balanced dynamic. Quietly, without drama or confrontation, we learned to appreciate each other's contributions genuinely and clearly. I felt deeply grateful for these changes, understanding fully that the path we'd taken, though challenging, had ultimately strengthened our bond in ways neither of us had previously imagined possible. Part 5. Looking back, I often thought about how drastically my relationship with my dad had shifted. From quiet resentment and obligation, to genuine mutual respect and understanding. Over time, our interactions became increasingly natural, driven by sincere appreciation rather than forced expectations. We began regularly spending weekends together, quietly working on small projects around his house, or enjoying simple outings like fishing trips or attending local sporting events. These moments allowed us to reconnect calmly and naturally, creating memories rooted firmly in mutual respect and clear boundaries. Eventually, my father took the initiative to openly address our entire family, quietly explaining the lessons he'd learned over the past couple of years. In a calm but sincere speech at a small family gathering, he admitted to previously taking certain relationships, especially ours, for granted, acknowledging publicly the financial and emotional contributions I'd made. This moment, while understated and simple, had a powerful impact on our relatives, who quietly listened with appreciation and respect. Afterward, several family members privately expressed gratitude to me for calmly maintaining my position and helping shift our family's views on obligation and support in healthier directions. As time passed, the financial independence my father developed grew even stronger. He quietly paid off the mortgage on his home, carefully managing his finances in ways he hadn't done previously. He became notably more responsible, regularly discussing financial decisions openly and respectfully with family, seeking input rather than assuming assistance. His calm and clear approach significantly influenced other family members, as well, prompting healthier discussions about boundaries and responsibilities within the wider family group. It was satisfying to watch this quiet yet profound transformation ripple outward, clearly improving relationships beyond just our own. My decision to provide occasional financial support, made freely rather than out of obligation, continued quietly and thoughtfully. Each gesture of help was met by genuine gratitude from my dad, who never again took these actions for granted. Instead, he always calmly acknowledged my contributions, clearly expressing sincere appreciation. Our relationship settled comfortably into this pattern, defined by respect and honesty, rather than unspoken assumptions. This new dynamic brought lasting stability, strengthening family bonds in a quiet, positive and deeply meaningful way. Reflecting now, I understood fully how powerful setting clear boundaries could be, not only for personal relationships but for families overall. By quietly holding firm to my principles and calmly communicating my intentions, our entire family had benefited profoundly. Today, our interactions remain defined by honesty, respect and clear communication. The experiences we'd navigated together taught us invaluable lessons about gratitude and family dynamics, quietly reshaping our bonds for the better. Ultimately, the journey from resentment to mutual respect had been transformative, and I felt deeply grateful for every careful step along the way.